Have you ever thought of traveling to Asia and see all the wonderful architecture that lies within but do not know where to start? Worry no more because we've got you covered. Come aboard with us as we explore Asian architecture, where we will learn about the facts, characteristics, and historical timeline of architecture in different Asian countries. For today's video, we will travel to 5 different destinations and discover what architectural beauty lies within them. So what are we waiting for? Let us now buckle up and relax as we take off to our first destination.
The history of Chinese architecture. Did you know that Chinese historical architecture features a wide range of styles, including those seen in temples, imperial palaces, altars, pavilions, official residences, and traditional homes? Conservative philosophies such as Confucianism, Taoism, and others have had a profound impact on Chinese society from ancient times. The essential principles of Chinese architecture have mostly remained same across time. The main differences have been in the decorative features. And did you know that Chinese architecture is an example of a style that began in China and evolved through millennia before influencing architecture throughout East Asia? For the historical timeline of Chinese architecture. First period is the Neolithic period. Banpo is an example of early building of Chinese architecture or during the Neolithic period. The next is the Shang dynasty. The Shang dynasty was the first to have written records which included inscriptions on bones and bones items. And next is the Zhou dynasty. More architectural shapes began to emerge. Long defensive walls were built, mourning halls, tombs, and altars were commonplace. Next is the Qin and Han dynasties. Throughout the Qin and Han dynasties, the skills for construction with wood evolved and were refined. Builders had mastered the art of burning tiles and building with stones. Next is the Three Kingdoms period and the Six Dynasties. Religious structures, particularly Buddhist temples and monasteries, were up all over China during this time period as a result of the government's enthusiasm for religion. The next is the Sui and Tang dynasties. As a result of the government's zeal for religion, religious structures, mainly Buddhist temples and monasteries, sprouted up all over China during this time period. Next is the Song and Yuan dynasties. The Song dynasties were a pivotal period in ancient Chinese architecture. During that time, significant progress had been made. And for the last is the Ming and Qing dynasties. The final 2 imperial dynasties of China saw the height of ancient architecture. Brick production has significantly increased. Any previous dynasties had been outdone by the quantity and quality of glazed tiles. The workplaces had a strict standardization. And for the notable structures of Chinese architecture, these are the Temple of Heaven, the Great Wall of China, and the Summer Palace. Temple of Heaven, established in the first part of the 15th century, is a respectable collection of exquisite cult structures surrounded by ancient pine forests and arranged in gardens. The Great Wall of China is a group of defensive structures built along the northern borders of ancient Chinese states and imperial China. And the Summer Palace is a large collection of lakes, gardens, and palaces. It was an imperial garden during the Qing dynasty, but currently it stores national historical materials. And for the classification of structures of Chinese architecture, the Lu are the multi-story buildings, the Tai are what we call the terraces, the Qing are the pavilions, the Gi are the multi-story pavilions, the Ta are the pagodas, Swan are the verandas with windows, the Wu are the rooms along roof corridors, and the Gong are what we call the palaces.
Type of person who wants to see the culture reflected in the country's architecture, then Indonesia is the destination for you. Remember that there are 34 provinces in Indonesia and each one is distinct in its own manner. As a result, Indonesian architecture comes in a variety of shapes and styles, each with its own unique characteristics and tale to tell. With that being said, let us discuss different types of Indonesian architecture, starting off with the traditional architecture. The houses and settlements of the several hundred ethnic groups of Indonesia are extremely varied and all have their own specific history. An example is the traditional Toraja house. Between the 4th and the 15th centuries, when Indonesia was heavily influenced by India, especially in Java, this religiously themed fashion emerged. These historical artifacts display the houses of worships that originally belonged to former Indonesian kingdoms. Examples are the known temples Borobudur and Prambanan. The mosque is the source of the Islamic aesthetic. Sumatra and Java were major centers of Islamic influence in the 15th century. The design makes use of towers that resemble the shape of a Hindu-Buddhist temple and multi-tiered roofs that resemble the Hindu Mount Meru conceptions. Menara Kudus Mosque is an example of this architecture. Indonesia had a number of historical kingdoms spread out around the archipelago, and there are obviously some palace structures in different locations. Typically, palace designs are based on regional vernacular architecture of that era. Here we look at the Palace of Yogyakarta, one of Indonesia's meticulously planned structures. It is understandable that the Dutch influence on Indonesian architecture is so powerful and has become a defining feature since the 16th and 17th century because the Dutch colonized Indonesia for 3.5 centuries. Rumah Sililitan Bazaar, also known as simply Sililitan Bazaar or Lebak City, is a former Dutch colonial country house located in Kramat Hati, Jakarta. The 1920s Javanese Art Deco style made a comeback in the 1950s and became the root national architectural style. Politically, it was a way of Indonesians liberated themselves from any trace of Dutch influence and was an expression of freedom. The Piringan Lakeside Villa is an example of this architecture. And last but not the least, as seen by the rows of skyscrapers covered in glass, steel and concrete, Indonesian architecture, like the rest of the globe, started to advance in the 1970s. A flourishing rise of urban and contemporary construction that characterizes Indonesia's metropolitan skyline today resulted from the disappearance of ultra-decorative ornaments and their replacement with modern and post-modern nuances. Some notable structures from Indonesia are as follows: Pagaruyung Palace, Tongkonan, and Borobudur Temple.
The history of Thai architecture reflects the diverse culture and historical influence that have shaped the country over the century. It is known for its distinctive features and characteristics such as pagoda and chedis, dome-shaped structure, and stucco relief. It places a strong emphasis on balance and symmetry as well as the use of natural materials. Let's talk about its historical timeline. First is the age of Tawarabadi. The pagoda built in this style have a square base and are characterized by an inverted, bell-shaped structure that is topped with a spire. It is characterized by its elaborate and ornate stucco decoration, multiple tier of rope cable, and the influence of both Khmer and indigenous Thai architecture. Next is the age of Suriwachai. It is characterized by its simplicity and lack of elaborate ornamentation in contrast to the Tawarabadi style. This style is often seen in the construction of royal palace and government building and reflects the influence of Western neoclassical architecture. Age of Lukburi. The Lukburi style reflects the influence of Khmer Empire, which is an important example of cultural exchange between Thai and its neighborhood. This style prepared to use brick, sandstone, and laterite. Next is the age of Changxian. This style is most commonly seen in the construction of Buddhist temple and reflects the influence of both indigenous Lana and Khmer architecture. Most religious places were built during this age. Next is the age of Sukhothai. The identity of this architecture is to display the Buddhist faith by building symbolic shape. It is characterized by its use of laterite and brick as well as the incorporation of lotus bud-shaped stupas and bell-shaped chedis. Age of Otong. This style was prevalent in central Thailand and can be seen in construction of both Hindu and Buddhist temples. The architecture of this period integrates the art of Tawarabadi and Khmer civilization. Age of Ayutthaya. The architecture of Ayutthaya period was used to showcase the power, wealth, and features, grand size, and appearance. Towards the end of Ayutthaya era, architecture was seen as a pinnacle of achievement, fulfilling the needs of the people and showcasing the beauty of Thailand. Some notable structure from Thailand are: first is the Wat Parkyu. It is a home to high revered statue of the Buddha carved from a single piece of jade. The temple is located within the ground of the Grand Palace and is a remarkable example of traditional Thai architecture and design. Next is the Wat Arun, or Temple of Dawn. It is best known for Khmer style tower which are adorned with colorful glass and Chinese porcelain, making it a unique example of Thai architecture. Last is the Chiang Mai Old City. Chiang Mai Old City is surrounded by ancient wall and is filled with traditional teak wood houses, making it one of the most picturesque and well-preserved historical areas in Thailand. That's all for history of Thai architecture. Now let's head on to our next destination, Cambodia.
Let me now welcome you to the Land of Smiles, Cambodia. The style of architecture of Cambodia is referred to as Khmer, or locally pronounced Khmer or Khmer. It is also sometimes referred to as Angkorian architecture. Here's a brief discussion of the three main historical chronicles of the architecture of Cambodia. First on the list is ancient Khmer architecture. From 802 to 1431 Common Era, Hmong people created the Khmer Empire. This included a portion of what is now southern Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and Laos years ago, which explains its similarities in these above mentioned. The sculptures from Indian rock cut temples were heavily incorporated into South Indian architecture, which was then Indianized in Cambodian, Annamese, and Javanese temples. These were numerous kingdoms that were constantly at war with one another, and India had a significant influence on their art and culture as a result of the long-established sea trading links with that subcontinent. Non-religious structures like homes were created during the Angkorian period using subpar materials like wood, whereas temples and other religious structures were built using stone. As a result, every Angkorian structure that is still standing is a place of worship. The study of Angkorian architecture must unavoidably place a strong emphasis on religious buildings. The Angkor temples are a collection of spectacular structures that were built during the Khmer Empire in accordance with the principles of this architectural period and developed in stages. The fundamental design of Angkorian temple was a central sanctuary, a courtyard, an enclosure, and a surrounding moat. Religion and legendary creatures from Buddhism and Hinduism served as inspiration for several design elements. However, due to the succession of several architectural styles, not all of these characteristics were equally present. Second on the list is the French colonial architectural style. From the year 1863 until its official independence in 1953, Cambodia was a French protectorate inside French Indochina. They constructed several buildings, including administrative buildings, banks, hospitals, hotels, and schools. Phnom Penh, Kampot, and Battambang have some of the best examples of French colonial architecture to be found in the country. Following its independence from France, the new Khmer architecture movement started under the reign of Prince Norodom Sihanouk.
He proposed to modernize all facets, including agriculture, infrastructure, industry, education, healthcare, tourism, and the arts, in order to lead Cambodia to become a vital component of the global community. The heritage and traditional structures were combined with modern trends. The primary element of this approach include the use of reinforced concrete and forceful constructions. Structures are placed on columns to generate natural cooling effects and overshaded spaces for social activities to deal with local tropical temperature. Additionally, its height meant act as a barrier during times of flooding. Other adaptations to vernacular customs include the use of wall panels, double walls, and roofs to exclude direct sunlight. The Nacre tradition served as inspiration for raised walkway and utilization of moats. In wet season, a moat's primary use is a water storage. In the dry season, it served as schooling mechanism. The National Sports Complex and the Teacher Training College are two standout instances of this strategy. There were minimal to non-trained architects or engineers in Cambodia at the time, and the style was heavily influenced by outside influences. The newly established Royal University of Fine Arts started teaching architecture in 1965. Since then, a large number of gifted architects have contributed to the prosperous new Khmer architecture era. Van Molliven was the most well-known architect of this institution among them. Many notable structures of Phnom Penh, including Olympic Stadium, the Chatham Theatre, and the Independence Monument, were designed by him. These buildings combine features of foreign architecture with those local tradition, materials, and climate. Additionally, he oversaw the development of Nai Bang Chat Resort in the serene coastal city of Kem.
Now, let's explore the architecture of Nepal and Tibet. But first, let's take a look at the architecture of Nepal. Nepali architecture or Nepalese architecture is a unique blend of artistic and practical considerations. Situated between the trade routes of India, Tibet, and China, Nepali architecture reflects influences from these cultural strongholds. Nepal has a variety of distinctive architectural features which are represented in residential, religious, and public buildings. Much of Nepal's architectural history is aligned with the dynasties that ruled at a particular time. Now, let's find out the historical timeline of Nepal. First is the Licchavi dynasty, which dated from 5th to 9th century. Licchavi kingdom was one of the earliest recorded dynasties to hold power in Nepal. During this time, temples such as the Shiva of Pashupati at Dayapatan, the Vaishnava temple of Changunarayan, and the Buddhist stupa of Swayambhu were erected. Sample structures during this period are the Pashupatinath temple, Changunarayan temple, and the Swayambhunath temple. Moving on from the Licchavi dynasty, next is the Thakuri dynasty, which dated from 9th to 12th century. Thakuri ruled Nepal from 900 to 1200 AD. The epitome of Thakuri dynasty in terms of architectural expression is Kasta Mandap temple. Though this temple was renovated by King Lakshmi Narsimha Malla around the 16th century, it is said that this temple was built with the trunks of only one tree. Next is the Malla dynasty, which dated from 12th to 18th century. In this period, Kathmandu would get three distinct Durbar squares: the Kathmandu Durbar Square, Patan Durbar Square, and the Bhaktapur Durbar Square. This period has a certain influence of Shikara architecture, which is evident with Krishna Mandir at Patan. Next dynasty is the Shah dynasty, which dated back from 18th century. From 1786 onwards, Nepal entered its modern era. In the 18th century, important buildings that remain today were erected, such as the Kastamanda. In 1816, the Shah kingdom ruled and the country's architecture was heavily influenced by the newer style. Various temples, fountains, and other important buildings were also constructed. Some of the sample structures during this period is the Singha Durbar and the Seto Durbar. Next, from the Shah dynasty comes the Rana dynasty, which dated from 1846 to 1951. This period saw both art and architecture of Nepal become heavily influenced by popular architectural trends in Europe. Significant tax revenue from this period went towards building stucco palaces. Prominent mansions in Kathmandu were adorned with marble tables, bronze figurines, and chandeliers. A sample structure from this period is the Ranikhat Palace or Rani Mahal. From the Rana dynasty, Nepali architecture evolved from the modern architecture after 1950. Between the end of the Rana dynasty and the restoration of democracy in 1990, Nepal's architecture becomes significantly more modern. In 1955, the Tribhuvan International Airport was opened. Moreover, modern architectural movement in Nepal started in 1950 with few aspiring foreign architects who practiced during that period, like Robert Peace, who did the Annapurna Hotel. Let's now explore the architecture of Tibet. Tibetan architecture is highly influenced by the architectural designs of the neighboring country Nepal, China, and India. There are lots of similarities in the designs and even structures. For example, stupas and the monasteries. Even the Buddhist arts along with the Buddhist architecture are very much influenced by these countries. Tibetan architecture contains Chinese and Indian influence that has many unique features brought about by its adaptation to the cold, generally arid high-altitude climate. So, some of the notable structures in Tibet is the Potala Palace, which is the massive fortress-like building that is situated on a slope of Moburi or Red Mountain and considered the quintessence of Tibetan architecture. The Potala Palace symbolizes Tibetan Buddhism and its central role in the traditional administration of Tibet. Next is the Jokhang Temple. It is a Buddhist temple in Barkor Square in Lhasa, the capital city of Tibet, Autonomous Region of China. Tibetans in general consider this temple as the most sacred and important temple in Tibet. According to the tradition, the temple was built for the king's two brides, Princess Wencheng of the Chinese Tang Dynasty and Princess Burkuti of Nepal. Both are said to have brought important Buddhist statues and images from China and Nepal to Tibet, which were housed here as part of their dowries. Next is Ramoche Temple. It is considered to be the most important temple in the city after the Jokhang Temple. Ramoche is considered to be the sister temple to the Jokhang, which was completed about the same time. Unlike the Jokhang, Ramoche was originally built in Chinese style. Lastly is the Sakya Monastery, also known as Pel Sakya, played an essential role in Tibetan history. It was once the center of political life in Tibet. During the Mongol Empire rule, Sakya Lamas allied with Mongol Khan. Due to the alliance, the Mongol Empire was converted to Tibetan Buddhism. During the rule of Mongolian Kublai Khan in the 13th century, Sakya Abbot became the ruler of Tibet.